What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/StoriesAboutKevin. Alright, this story's called The Stupidest Possible Adult Covina. Story time! Okay, this Covina is in her mid-30s, married to a dumb guy about 20 years her senior, and they have 3 kids together who are between the ages of 10 and 15. I feel deeply sorry for the children because I've never met anyone nearly as stupid as their mother, and she's screwing up all their lives. That sounds mean, but hear me out. I don't really know where to start because there's just so much crap to unpack here. So I'm just gonna pick a story and go from there. First off, Covina doesn't have any teeth. None. She's actually not a druggie, she just has an awful diet and poor oral hygiene that she had to have them all pulled last year at the hospital where she had been admitted for severe dental pain because she doesn't have any dental insurance or money for reasons that will become clear further on. She refuses to acknowledge the bad diet and hygiene and instead insists that it's because her kids took all the calcium out of her teeth during her pregnancy. Pregnancy can cause issues with one's teeth, but surely not a decade after the fact. She's also around 300 pounds. She's mentioned wanting to lose weight, but refuses to go on any kind of diet because she's convinced herself that she'll become anorexic, which has never happened. She's been clinically obese her entire adult life. Covina dropped out of high school because she wanted to party, but a couple of years later, she then met her then 40-ish year old boyfriend, and they got married and had their kids. Deliberately. All 3 were planned. She doesn't have a diploma or a GED, much less any college education, so her job prospects are extremely limited. She does in-home health part-time and makes about $9 an hour. She also gets a few hours a week at an auto parts store, which pays about the same hourly wage. Her husband, Kevin, had some sort of injury many years ago that left him on disability, which he was already receiving at the time they met. However, he was kicked off disability once it was discovered that he had secretly taken a part-time, low-paying handyman job without reporting it. Once he lost his disability, he also promptly lost his job and decided that he'd rather not work after all. So her 2 part-time jobs are their only income. However, Covina has been inordinately proud of the fact that she made $400 in sales at her auto parts job recently, and is extremely hopeful that this is the start of a great sales career. The only problem is that the auto parts store she works at is a well-known chain store that is neither commission-based nor involves sales in any way. What actually happened was that she was the one working at the cash register when a couple of customers came up to pay for a couple of relatively expensive parts. She's a cashier. That's it. There's no amazing sales job looming in her future. Neither Kevin nor Covina has a driver's license. Kevin hasn't had one in probably 15 years for various reasons, and Covina has never had a driver's license because she cannot pass the driving test. The last time she tried, she ran into a pole. She drives anyway, of course, just illegally. Yes, there have been several accidents. I don't know how they both aren't in jail. They have had a succession of overly expensive vehicles which they buy from seedy little used car places with their increasingly bad credit, and which almost immediately and invariably turn out to be total lemons that they then spend even more money attempting to repair before finally giving up and repeating the process. The most recent iteration is a new, for them, 2003 Ford truck with around 150,000 miles and a variety of engine problems, which cost them approximately $17,000 and cannot pass inspection. She wants to ask a mechanic if she should replace it with yet another vehicle or fix it up, which will cost her around $10,000. To be clear, she doesn't have $10,000 or even $100. She's talking about using her entire income tax refund plus some of her stimulus check to pay for the repairs to this truck that's not worth half the money she spent purchasing it. Covina and family were, until recently, living in a trailer that had multiple holes holes in the floor and no running water. They couldn't afford this trailer. They were being allowed to use it for free by a friend of a friend who had been planning to have it scrapped and instead kindly offered it to this family in need. Instead of saving as much as possible during this period of time, when she didn't have to worry about rent, Covina decided to purchase a $4,000 living room set. Once a friend of mine discovered that Covina had also filled up the trailer with cats and dogs, who were dying from lack of veterinary care because she couldn't afford it, Covina and family were evicted. Covina had to pay for an apartment and could no longer make the payments on her living room set. It was repossessed, so she was out of both the furniture and the roughly $2,000 she had already invested into it. Once she found a new place and got her income tax refund, she promptly spent another $1,000 on her dream couch, which then became so infested with roaches that she threw it out when they got evicted and had to move again, only to find that the new current place has just as many roaches, so she might as well have kept it. Covina is very stressed about her current living situation. She now rents a cheap, rundown 2-bedroom apartment against the rules because there are 5 people living there, but it's all she can afford, and the apartment manager has looked the other way so far, and has a giant hole in the ceiling that she wants maintenance to come fix, but she's afraid of letting anyone into the apartment because she has a huge dog and 10 cats, whereas she's not supposed to have any animals at all. She said she knows she's not going to be able to get her deposit back when she moves unless she replaces a lot of things in her apartment, such as the carpet, the refrigerator, and the stove. When asked why she would need to replace the appliances, she shared that it's because the cats piss and poo all over them. When asked why the cats would relieve themselves on all the appliances or the carpet instead of in the litter box, Covina explained that it's because she's the only one who cleans up after them, even though her husband is at home all day and the children are doing virtual schooling, and the litter box gets so nasty that the cats won't use it. The dog is also 6 years old and not housebroken. She has become accustomed to the dog pooping and peeing on the floor. She admitted that several of the cats have feline AIDS, but she can't afford to take any of them to the vet. She doesn't want to take them to the vet or shelter anyways because they'll think she's an animal hoarder, and she's worried CPS will get involved because her kids are in that environment. Speaking of the kids, these poor children. Covina is one of those moms who has an excuse for everything her kids do, don't do, won't do, or can't do. When the teachers at their previous school tried to meet with Covina regarding some concerns they had about her kids' behavior and academic performance, she became incensed and began shouting about how the kids are all dyslexic, they're not, and that's why they can't do their work, and how dare they try to tell her how to raise her children. Her solution was to pull them all out of school and homeschool them. Recall that Covina has no qualifications to do this whatsoever, and add to that the fact that she's so functionally illiterate with the working IQ of a beanbag and also possesses 0 critical thinking skills. She finally gave up a couple of years into this misguided effort and enrolled them back into public school. Different school system this time. They move around a lot because they keep getting evicted. The kids were so far behind that they each had to be held back a year, and they're still significantly behind their classmates. The middle child had to be held back twice, so she's about to turn 13 and is in the 5th grade. The oldest is about to be held back in 9th grade again as well. There's more, but this is already a novel, and you get the idea. Covina essentially has no friends because everyone she comes into contact with is, of course, baffled and disgusted. I'm ashamed to admit, I mostly stick around on Facebook out of a combination of pity and morbid, horrified curiosity as I watch each fascinating new chapter in this absolute poo show unfold. I do try to offer help and advice whenever possible, which is difficult because Covina bristles at any implication that she doesn't already have everything well in hand. My current attempt at assistance involves my fixing up Covina's resume and sending her information about local job fairs. I don't know that it's gonna work though, because she seems to be holding out hope that her $400 in sales is about to result in more hours at the auto parts store, so she may stop searching for a better job. We shall see. Oh, that poor lady. Like, that, she needs an intervention. Like, oh my Alright, this story's called Fight of the Year, Caveman Kevin vs. Edgelord. Allow me to take you back to a simpler time, the early 2000s. The Star Wars prequel trilogy was about to end, Halo 2 LAN parties were a regular thing, and John Cena was still working his way to the top of the WWE ladder. Times were good. I had just moved to a new school for my junior year, grade 11. I know a few people here and there from sports, but other than that, clean slate. Then I met the subject of our story. Enter Caveman Kevin, or Calvin Klein for short. I met Calvin Klein and his older brother Big Boy through some shared classes. One thing to know about these two, they both dominated the school weightlifting records, with Calvin Klein being the only person to get on the record board as a freshman. On top of this, both were on the wrestling team, with Calvin Klein turning heads as a freshman taking out former state champs. Calvin Klein was a true caveman to the T, a big ol' lovable knucklehead. Some examples. 1. During a wrestling meet at what could be considered an upscale school, he spent $10 on bottles of soda. The reason? The machine was one of those conveyor belt vending machines, and he was fascinated with it. He just kept dumping money into it, giggling like a 5-year-old. 2. He did some work on his crappy little Toyota, but forgot to put water in the radiator or put fresh oil back in. As he tried to drive it around, the grinding was unbearable. Then it caught fire. Again, he giggled like a 5-year-old while having a cigarette. 3. He tried to argue that Mountain Dew was chemically designed to lower sperm count in health class. He was adamant in his belief, and you couldn't change his mind. I heard something like that, but the whole thing was Mountain Dew shrunk your balls. But I guess it's not true. I don't know, maybe it is. Anyway, those are just a few of the many examples. The next year, Edgelord entered the picture. I'd known him from my previous school, and he was one of the biggest buttholes I'd ever met. He'd openly brag about needing to keep his women in line, insinuating he abused them. Edgelord started making his presence known in my new school. He'd gotten into a relationship with a freshman girl. They'd met at church, a lot of kids at my new school went to. He started hanging out with her during lunch. Apparently he'd gotten into a homeschool program after I'd left and had nothing better to do. It was during one of these lunch breaks, Edgelord lost it on his girlfriend. She apparently said the wrong thing, and he smacked her hard enough to make her fall. Whoa. He then peppered her with various insults, saying she needed to watch herself. Calvin Klein, being in the same area for lunch, wasn't having this and confronted him. Some words were said, and they both agreed to fight at the local pond after school. When school ended for the day, a group of us made our way to the pond. There we found Calvin Klein warming up by shadowboxing. About 10 minutes later, Edgelord rolled up in his crappy Toyota, loaded up with a few of his followers. Calvin Klein kept his eyes on Edgelord, watching him like a hawk. As Edgelord got out of his car, he told the others to stay in as he kept his left hand in his pocket. He walked up to Calvin Klein, right hand extended out, and told him, "I want to make peace." Calvin Klein, though, wasn't there for peace. Calvin Klein, in his caveman glory, punched Edgelord hard enough to send him crashing to the ground. As he fell to the ground, Edgelord's hand came out of his pocket and something fell out. Turns out he'd been holding a small thing of pepper spray, which was quickly snapped up by someone from the crowd. While Edgelord struggled to get up, Calvin Klein hopped on top of him and began delivering a glorious ground and pound on him, with Edgelord crying and begging for his life. Calvin Klein then picked Edgelord up and slammed him against the back passenger window of his crappy Toyota, shattering it. Yo! Calvin Klein picked Edgelord up again and shoved him through the broken window, screaming at the guys inside to get out of our town. Calvin Klein then giggled like a 5-year-old as the Toyota drove off. Aftermath, well, Calvin Klein was arrested for the beatdown and Edgelord pressed charges. Edgelord's followers even corroborated the events and served as witnesses. I'm not sure how, but it was eventually thrown out and Calvin Klein didn't get into any serious trouble. Edgelord was still, however, on a lot of folks' crap lists, including Big Boy's. Big Boy randomly ended up bumping into Edgelord one day at Walmart hard. While in the parking lot, Edgelord backed his car into Big Boy's. Big Boy confronted him, and Edgelord threatened violence. Big Boy laughingly asked him if he planned on suing him when he lost. Edgelord didn't recognize Big Boy until he mentioned he was Calvin Klein's brother, and Edgelord ran off. Big Boy said Edgelord left the car behind, but I can't confirm that. Edgelord wound up in Florida last I heard, running from some more folks he pissed off. Don't know if he went back for his car or not. As for Calvin Klein, he ended up running with a rough crowd, becoming a drug dealer for a bit, but cleaned himself up long enough to go straight and start a family. Damn, that Kevin sounds like a freaking badass. Edgelord I don't like, but Kevin already kicked his butt, and he managed to start a very successful clothing brand. Alright, this story's called Kevin Fails Perception Check and Scars Baby for Life. In this woeful tale, Kevin is my dad. I have 3 older siblings, but despite this, Kevin never really learned the ins and outs of childcare. When I was a baby, Kevin was tasked with giving me a bath while my mom watched my siblings. She set up the baby tub for him in the bathtub with water and everything, but he didn't notice and decided the bathroom sink was the only option. So without clearing off the counter of anything that could be dangerous, he puts me in the sink and lays my head on the curling iron that he didn't know was still on. Curses to whomever used that device that morning. I spent my whole life with a scar on the back of my head, creating a bald spot that is just a straight line on the back of my head. Thanks, Dad. Wait, what? I don't have any words, man. Oof. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.